Now, let's cover the export parameters. By default in Figma, you see on the right sidebar, export. And if you select, for example, just canvas, without any layers, without any frames, just nothing but canvas, in this case, when you click here, you'll be able to export everything that you see and that you have on this canvas. It means that if I create here another frame, and here another shape, and here one more shape, so then during the export, when I press preview, and by the way, I recommend you to use preview before you start exporting something. Because sometimes if the layer, for example, is outside of the frame that you want to export, in this case, that layer won't be exported if you haven't selected a particular feature. So that's why I recommend you to check in the preview what will be exported. And as you can see here, that while I'm hovering on this particular element, on this particular frame, what I'll see in the export file, the entire canvas with all these additional layers and shapes and frames that I created. Keep it in mind to use preview. In addition to that, let's take a look at other parameters that we see here. Well, we see the scale in what the file or shape or frame will be exported at. For example, by default, it goes 1x. It means that the size of the file that will be exported will be exactly the same as you set here in Figma, which means that this particular layer, this particular frame will be 1920 by 1080. If you set, for example, 0.5, it means that it will be half of that size, which means 960 by 540. And if you set more, so well, that's just a multiplier. Keep in mind that when you need to export it in a bigger size, on a smaller size, you can use just this parameter without changing the size of this file. For example, if I wanted to export it in 0.5x using the scale tool, instead of creating it here, I just simply can select the file and choose in the export parameter 0.5x. That's it. One more thing that we see here is suffix and also the format in which the file will be exported. If you need transparent background, I recommend you to choose PNG file, PNG format. JPEG will be really good when you have lots of colors and gradients in your file, and at the same time you want to save space because the file will be will take less space in your computer. And SVG format, this is just a vector format, is really incredible when you are creating, for example, elements for animations, or when you are creating elements for websites and you want to save space, not to upload an image, but you will actually use the SVG format in your web design file. And PDF is also, it's not only the PDF files that you can open in Adobe Acrobat, for example. PDF also means vector format. And you can use this format when you're creating assets for iOS. Sometimes iOS developers may ask you to provide them the PDF format of the file. In all other cases, if you want to learn more about all of these things, they are not about Figma, so that's why I don't want to cover them. But in general, you can read about all of these formats, Google them, and you will find lots of incredible information. I personally use PNG for icons, and also every single time when I don't have too many colors in my file, and when I need transparency, like full transparency from the file, which means that I want to put then the file that I created on something else, on top of something else, but I want to have transparent background. I use JPEG files every single time when I'm creating images for my websites, for my landing pages. So I also compress them later, but I upload JPEG files when I have lots of colors, when the file, for example, the image itself is really big, or when I don't need transparency. In this case, I export it as JPEG file, then I compress it, and then I upload it for better performance to my landing page. So the file takes not so much space. Also, it loads much faster, even if a user has not the best internet, for example, on their phone, then the file will be downloaded much faster on their phone, and it will provide better user experience in general. I use SVG format every single time when I create icons, for example, or illustrations, and I want to save space. Like, I don't want to upload actual image. I just take the code, SVG code from the file, and I just put it on web, and that's it. The file is there. Super convenient and fast way to provide the fastest probably performance if your file doesn't have lots of different shapes and everything, but the file will be vector format. And this is incredible because it means that no matter what scale I'll set for that file, it will have the best pixel perfect output. And PDF format I'm using mostly when I'm creating actual PDF files. And also I use it for example, if I need to create invoices, then I export them and I create them, for example, in Figma. I export them in PDF format. In addition to that, in the module 3 of this course for content creators, I'll show you one additional option that will allow you to create ebooks. If you create, for example, digital ebooks as a product, digital product, and you want to sell it, I will show you how to use Figma for that. And also I'll show you one additional option that will allow you to create content super fast and easy for LinkedIn. It will be in the module 3. So these 4 different formats, and here you see this additional more option. When you click on that, you can set ignore overlapping layers. What does it mean? Well, we can test it right here when we have 2 additional shapes, and as you can see, both of these shapes are outside of our frame. They're both outside of our frame. And when I select a frame and I set export here, as you can see on the preview, these shapes, even the part of them are on top of the frame, like this circle, this square is on top of the frame. When I select the frame, when I want to export it, in the preview, I don't have the shape in the preview. But when I set this option, ignore overlapping layers, you see that then these shapes, the parts of the shapes, will be included into the frame, into the export of the frame. Include bounding box. Well, it just add a bounding box on top of it, but you don't need that. So my recommendation is just to keep in mind this option, ignore overlapping layers. It means that the layer that is outside of the frame will not be added. And if you want them to be added to the frame, then press this checkbox off. Ignore overlapping layers. This is specifically useful, for example, when you created a title for your frame, a title that will be inside of the frame, and you created it and you're like, oh, I love everything. I'll even set here 160, so title, awesome, I want to export it, amazing. And you select this frame to export it, and if by default in Figma, you have this checkbox here, ignore overlapping layers, boom, it doesn't have it. And you thinking like, yeah, but it's in the frame. But when you look in the layers themselves, you will see that the title is outside of the frame. And you have 2 options how to include it into the frame. Well, the first option is you just move your title, your text inside of the frame, then it will be here. Or you just, during the export, you click ignore overlapping layers, and then the title will be inside. I want to show it to you because almost nobody knows about this additional option. Nobody clicks on this additional option that allows you to ignore or include overlapping layers. And one more thing that I want to mention here, that here you have a plus sign, and what this plus sign is for. Well, when you click on that, you can add additional types of like additional export option to the export, which means like 2x, 3x, or whatever you want. You can change it from PNG to JPEG, and you also want to have a PDF. And basically out of just one file, when you click export this particular frame, it will be exported in 3 different formats: PNG, JPEG, and PDF. And also it will be exported in different sizes. And as you can see, when you select PDF, while you can have the suffix which is add 3x, it doesn't matter because PDF is a vector format and it will always save as a just regular 1x. But when you set JPEG or PNG, and these two formats are raster images, in this case you can set the size and you can set the suffix that will be added. It can be add to x. It means that if we set 4x, then it will be add for x. It was a really important feature back in like a few years ago, when you had for every single font size, like for iPhone 6, you had to save the file, the icon or the image in 3 different dimensions and 3 different sizes: 1x, 2x, and 3x. And you saved 3x for iPhone 6 Max, for example, and then, or iPhone 8 Max. So, and then the image will be pixel perfect for every single size, but at the same time, it will not take too much space from your phone. It was back in the time when memory was really important, and the phones didn't allow you to, well, they allowed, but this is how you could optimize your designs. Today it's not so important, but still keep it in mind depending on what you're designing it for. For example, if you are designing something for ATM machine, when you go to the bank and you design this interface, usually those interfaces are not so fast and they don't have huge memory in them. If you design something for like infotainment system or entertainment system for airplane, you know that they're really slow, and it means that they don't have like enough memory. And in this case, it's better for their optimization to provide the best option, the option that will work the best for that specific device. So keep that in mind when you're designing something. Also keep in mind where this file will be used, and then choose the option that will work here. But because this is like a design tip, but because we are talking here about Figma, keep in mind that in Figma you have all these options and you can set them here. So basically that's it. If you want to remove options for export, just press minus, and if you want to export it fast, Command Shift E, and then the file will be selected and you press export, and that's it. If you just need to export something, keep in mind that before exporting everything that you have, when you press Command Shift E, you have to first select what you want to export. So basically, if I want to export this particular layer and also I want to export this one, then I click plus here, I choose the option, well, it will be PNG, okay, and I want to export the Figma Pro Secrets frame with everything that includes there, and I want to export it in the JPEG format in XX. Then when I press Command Shift E, I'll see everything that will be exported from this particular file that I'm working at. This is specifically useful when you have lots of frames, that has to be lots of frames, icons, or illustrations that has to be exported, and it will be really hard to go to each and export this icon, export this icon, export this icon. you just can press Command Shift E and press export, and then they will be exported to your computer. So that's it for this lesson. Yeah, I hope that I covered every single item here, every single piece of export parameters. Now you know what to do, and I'll see you in the next lesson in the parameters that we haven't discussed yet, that called constraints. And it's really cool to know constraints because they will make you more efficient and also flexible as a designer, because you will be able to use them later when we will start working with auto layout specifically. See you in the next lesson.